Silence is often misunderstood. People think it's a sign of weakness, avoidance, or lack of courage, but in reality, silence can be one of the most powerful responses you can give, especially when someone expects you to react emotionally. When you're calm and collected in a situation where you might normally lash out, beg, or defend yourself, you completely shift the dynamic. Instead of giving him the emotional reaction he might be used to, you're showing that you can control yourself, your words, and your presence. This kind of composure is not only rare, it's magnetic. It sends a message without you having to explain anything. You are not desperate for his attention, and you are not willing to play the emotional tug-of-war game. When you choose silence, you're not ignoring the situation or pretending it doesn't matter. You're choosing to hold your power. In many cases, the reason people push your buttons is to get a reaction to confirm they still have influence over you. If you give them that reaction, they feel in control, but the moment you stop reacting and instead respond with calm, intentional stillness, that control slips away. He begins to question what's going through your mind, and more importantly, he starts to feel the absence of the emotional energy you used to give him. This approach is not about playing games or manipulating, it's about choosing dignity over desperation. When you stay silent, you keep your boundaries intact. You're not running after him to explain yourself, to prove your worth, or to convince him to see things your way. Instead, you're allowing him the space to reflect on his own actions without you clouding his mind with arguments or pleas. That's when people often start to feel the weight of their choices because your silence creates a mirror. Calm silence also has a psychological impact. In any conversation or relationship, humans are used to filling silence with words, explanations, or emotional reactions. When you refuse to fill that gap, it creates tension. That tension is not always comfortable for the other person. It can spark curiosity, confusion, and even regret. He may start to wonder, why isn't she reacting? Why isn't she trying to fix this? Has she moved on? That uncertainty is powerful because it shifts the balance of who is pursuing who. It's also important to note that silence doesn't mean complete disappearance unless you truly want to walk away. It's about being present but measured. You're not cutting him off to punish him, but you're not giving him unlimited access to your thoughts and emotions anymore. You're selective with your communication, choosing only to speak when it's necessary or when it truly aligns with your values and boundaries. This shows self-respect, and self-respect is incredibly attractive. Think about the times in your life when someone pulled back from you unexpectedly. You probably found yourself thinking about them more, wondering what they were doing, questioning if you did something wrong. That mental loop can be intense, and it's exactly what happens when you practice calm silence in the right way. It makes him reflect instead of defend. When people feel the need to defend themselves, they often dig their heels in and push back harder. But when they're left in quiet space, they have nothing to fight against, only their own thoughts. The beauty of calm silence is that it also gives you time to see things clearly. When you're not reacting, you can process your own feelings without being influenced by his words or actions. You can see whether this person truly aligns with your values, whether the relationship is worth continuing, and whether his behavior matches his words. In other words, silence benefits both your power and your clarity. Of course, this requires emotional discipline. In moments of conflict, it's natural to want to defend yourself, explain, or demand answers. But that often comes from fear of being misunderstood, fear of being abandoned, fear of losing control. The moment you let go of that fear and embrace silence, you step into a position of strength. You're no longer playing defense, you're creating space for him to realize what he risks losing. Sometimes silence will make him chase you, other times it will simply show you that he never intended to meet you halfway. Either way, you win because you're operating from a place of self-worth, not dependency. You're not waiting for validation from him. You've already given it to yourself. And that's the thing about the power of calm silence. It's not about whether he comes back or changes. It's about showing that you can remain grounded no matter how much someone tries to shake you. That kind of strength is unforgettable. In the end, you're teaching him something without saying a word. You will not compete for his attention, you will not beg for his respect, and you will not give your energy to someone who doesn't value it. Pulling back your energy isn't about punishing someone or trying to manipulate their emotions. It's about reclaiming your own space and protecting your peace. When you stop pouring endless time, attention, and emotional effort into someone who's been taking it for granted, you create a vacuum. And here's the thing about a vacuum, people notice it immediately. They feel the absence of your presence, your care, your laughter, and even the little gestures they may have brushed off before. That absence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. Most people are used to a certain dynamic in relationships. If you've always been the one initiating conversations, checking in, offering support, or making plans, they become accustomed to receiving that energy without having to earn it. They might even start assuming it will always be there no matter how they treat you. When you pull back, you disrupt that pattern. You're essentially saying, without a single word, that access to you is not unlimited. It must be respected and reciprocated. The act of pulling back is also a declaration of self-respect. You're no longer chasing validation from someone who isn't showing up in the same way you are. You're stepping away from the role of overgiver and placing the responsibility for the relationship back into both hands, not just your own. This is where the shift begins. Without your constant presence, he is forced to sit with the reality of what life feels like without your steady stream of attention. The truth is, people rarely realize the value of something when it's always available. It's only when it's gone, or at least significantly reduced, that they start to think about what it meant to them. By pulling back, you give him the opportunity to feel that gap. He may not recognize it right away. At first, he might just notice that you're less available or not as talkative. But over time, that quiet absence becomes a loud reminder of what he's missing. This approach also shifts the emotional balance. If you've been the one overextending, chances are you've been operating from a place of wanting to hold things together to keep the connection alive at all costs. When you step back, you're no longer carrying the emotional load alone. That imbalance starts to correct itself, not because you forced it, but because you stopped enabling it. If he truly values you, he will start to lean in to fill that gap. If he doesn't, his lack of effort will become clear, and you'll have your answer without having to beg for it. It's important to understand that pulling back doesn't mean being cold, cruel, or passive-aggressive. It simply means you're no longer giving more than you receive. You still respond politely when he reaches out, but you don't initiate as often. You still listen when he talks, but you no longer drop everything to be available at his convenience. You let him feel the natural consequences of not showing up for you in the way you deserve. The psychological effect of this can be powerful. When someone is used to you always being there and suddenly you're not, they begin to wonder why. That wondering often leads to reflection on their actions, on the relationship, and on the ways they may have taken you for granted. Sometimes that reflection results in genuine effort to repair things. Other times it exposes the reality that they were never willing to give you what you needed. Either outcome is a win for you because it gives you clarity without the chaos of chasing answers. Pulling back also protects you from emotional burnout. Relationships that are one-sided are exhausting, and constantly trying to make someone see your worth is draining. When you step back, you give yourself the space to focus on your own needs, your own growth, and your own joy. That shift in focus is often when your confidence begins to rebuild. You're no longer measuring your value by someone else's level of attention. You're defining it for yourself. Ironically, the very act of pulling back often makes you more attractive in the other person's eyes, not because you're playing games, but because you're showing that you have a full, rich life outside of them. You're not clinging to them for identity or happiness. You're choosing whether or not they still fit into the life you're building. That self-assurance is magnetic, and it often makes the other person reconsider the way they've been treating you. In the end, pulling back is about reclaiming your energy and letting your absence speak where your words no longer have impact. It forces the other person to either step up or step out, and either way, you're left with a clearer, healthier path forward. Maintaining your composure when emotions are high is one of the most powerful moves you can make, especially when someone expects you to react, plead, or fight for their attention. The moment you refuse to give them that emotional payoff, you completely shift the dynamic. People who pull away or test your boundaries often expect to see desperation. They expect your anxiety to drive you into chasing, explaining, or proving yourself. When you don't take that bait, you send a subtle but undeniable message. You are not controlled by their actions, and your sense of worth isn't dependent on how they treat you in that moment. Composure is more than just staying calm on the outside. It's about controlling the narrative in your own mind. When you let panic or insecurity take over, you start making decisions that don't align with your true value. You might send multiple messages, over-explain your feelings, or beg for clarity. But when you stay composed, you take back that control. You allow space for them to reveal their intentions without your emotions clouding the reality of their behavior. There's also a psychological advantage in being the one who doesn't react impulsively. Humans are wired to notice contrasts. If someone pulls away and you mirror that distance instead of fighting it, they are forced to confront the silence they created. Instead of the relationship being filled with your energy trying to fix things, there's now an open space they can't ignore. That space becomes a mirror reflecting their own actions back to them. And because you've remained calm and steady, they can't twist the situation to make it about your overreaction. The beauty of composure is that it's disarming. When someone expects drama and instead gets calm self-assurance, they don't know how to handle it. This can trigger a moment of self-reflection on their end because if you're not chasing them, maybe they aren't as important to your happiness as they assumed. That thought alone can make them reconsider how they've been treating you. It's also important to remember that composure doesn't mean suppression. You're not pretending you don't care or bottling up your emotions until they explode later. You're simply choosing not to hand your emotions over to someone who hasn't shown they can handle them with care. You process your feelings privately through journaling, talking to a trusted friend, or simply giving yourself time to breathe, but you don't use them as a bargaining chip in the relationship. When you maintain your calm, you protect your dignity. Even if the situation ends, you won't look back with regret, wishing you hadn't begged or said things in the heat of the moment. You'll know you held your ground and acted from a place of self-respect. This not only preserves your self-esteem, but also strengthens the image you project to the other person. Whether they admit it or not, composure commands respect. There's also a hidden benefit the moment you decide not to let someone's behavior dictate your emotional state. You take away their power. They can't push your buttons to get a reaction, which means they can no longer control the pace or tone of the interaction. Instead, you set the rhythm, one of steadiness, balance, and self-assuredness. Over time, this approach tends to make people who took you for granted start to question their own actions. They may wonder why you aren't reacting, why you're so calm, and what you might be thinking. That curiosity often becomes discomfort. And discomfort is a powerful motivator for change. In many cases, they'll start reaching out or making more effort simply because they realize they can't read you the way they used to. But here's the key: composure isn't a tactic to get them back. It's a tool for protecting yourself and clarifying the relationship. If they return or start acting differently, that's a bonus. If they don't, your calmness has already given you the clarity you need to walk away without second-guessing your decision. Either way, you win. When you choose composure over chaos, you demonstrate that your peace of mind is non-negotiable. And once you truly live by that standard, you'll find that not only do the right people respect it, but the wrong ones can no longer shake your foundation. Pulling your energy back is one of the most impactful decisions you can make when someone has grown distant, dismissive, or complacent in their connection with you. Energy isn't just about physical presence, it's the attention, care, and emotional investment you pour into a person. When that energy flows freely towards someone who is taking it for granted, they often stop valuing it. It becomes background noise, something they assume will always be there. The moment you remove it, the entire atmosphere changes and they are forced to notice the absence. What makes this so powerful is that energy is felt more in its absence than in its constant presence. People often don't realize how much they've relied on the comfort of your attention until it's gone. That's when the silence becomes loud. The phone that used to light up with your messages stays still. The voice they were used to hearing goes quiet. The support they leaned on disappears. This absence can be uncomfortable, even unsettling, and it forces them to face a reality they may have been avoiding, that your presence in their life was not a given, but a privilege. When you pull back, it's not about playing games or trying to manipulate, it's about self-preservation and restoring balance. Relationships, whether romantic or otherwise, should be a mutual exchange of energy. If you are constantly pouring in while the other person gives little in return, the connection becomes lopsided and resentment starts to build. By stepping back, you give yourself room to recharge, regain clarity, and reassess whether this dynamic is truly healthy for you. There is also a deep psychological shift that happens when you redirect your energy inward. Instead of chasing validation or attention, you begin to invest in yourself, your goals, your hobbies, your friendships, your personal growth. This shift sends a clear signal. Even without words, you are not dependent on their approval or attention to feel whole. That independence is both attractive and intimidating. It creates an unspoken challenge for them to either rise to meet your energy or accept that they may lose you. The truth is, people are more likely to value something when they feel the possibility of losing it. As long as you're always available, always accommodating, they may never truly grasp what you bring to the table. But when you step back, they're given a rare opportunity to miss you. not the version of you that's chasing them, but the version that's radiant, focused, and thriving without them. Missing you in that form can be a wake-up call, one that inspires them to reflect on their own behavior and what they might need to change. Of course, pulling your energy back requires emotional discipline. It can be tempting to check in, send that just thinking of you message, or casually like their posts to remind them you're still around. But the impact of stepping back comes from consistency. You're not cutting them off completely. You're simply no longer feeding the connection with the same intensity. You allow space for them to contribute, to initiate, to show you where you stand without you filling in all the gaps. This space also benefits you because it gives you a clearer perspective on the relationship. When you're in the constant flow of giving, it's easy to overlook patterns that aren't serving you. Distance helps you see whether this person reaches out when you're not the one keeping the connection alive, whether they value your presence enough to make the effort, and whether their actions align with their words. There's a freedom that comes with this shift. You begin to realize that your worth isn't tied to how much energy you can give to someone else. It's tied to how you value yourself. By redirecting that energy, you not only protect your emotional reserves, but also attract people and situations that match the respect and effort you deserve. The relationships that remain after you've pulled back are the ones worth keeping because they're built on mutual care, not one-sided effort. And while the person you've pulled away from may feel the discomfort of your absence, it's not your responsibility to manage their feelings or rush in to soothe them. If the connection is meant to be, they will step forward to meet you halfway. If they don't, you've already taken the first step toward creating space for people who will. Pulling your energy back is an act of self-respect. It's a quiet yet powerful reminder to yourself and to others that your presence is valuable and you won't give it freely to those who treat it carelessly. When you stop over-explaining yourself, you reclaim a level of personal power that many people don't even realize they've been giving away. Over-explaining often comes from a place of anxiety, a need to be understood, or a fear of being misjudged. You want the other person to see your side, to know your intentions, to believe that your choices are justified. But the truth is, when you constantly explain and defend your actions, you're sending an unspoken message that their opinion has more weight than your own. You're essentially seeking permission instead of standing confidently in your truth. The problem with over-explaining is that it shifts the dynamic in the relationship. The more you explain, the more power you hand over, and the more it invites unnecessary judgment or control from the other person. It subtly puts you in a position where you're on trial for your decisions, waiting for a verdict from someone else. That's not how a balanced, healthy connection should work. Mutual respect means each person has the right to make their own choices without having to justify every move like they're being interrogated. When you stop over-explaining, you stop feeding the loop of overthinking. Instead of replaying conversations in your mind, wondering if you said enough or explained enough, you trust that your boundaries, actions, and choices speak for themselves. You replace the compulsion to fill every silence with reasoning by allowing your no to stand on its own, or letting your decision remain as a simple, firm statement. That's when people start to notice the change. They feel the shift in your energy, the confidence in your words, and the fact that you no longer feel the need to convince them of anything. This doesn't mean you become cold or dismissive. It means you choose your words intentionally, speaking from a place of clarity rather than fear. If someone truly values you, they won't demand endless justifications. They'll respect your choices, even if they don't fully understand them. In fact, when you stop explaining yourself excessively, it often earns you more respect. People tend to admire quiet confidence. It's magnetic because it signals that you trust yourself enough to stand firm without constant validation. Another powerful aspect of breaking the over-explaining habit is how it changes the emotional balance. Over-explaining can sometimes give the other person ammunition to use against you later. The more details you give, the more room you allow for them to twist your words, challenge your reasoning, or poke holes in your story. By keeping your explanations concise and necessary, you protect yourself from unnecessary back and forth arguments. You give less space for misunderstanding because your words are deliberate, not scrambled by a flood of over-clarification. And there's a deeper layer to this. When you stop over-explaining, you begin to heal the part of you that once believed you had to prove your worth. You stop trying to manage other people's perceptions because you understand that no amount of words will control how someone chooses to interpret your actions. People will believe what they want to believe. Your responsibility is not to manage their thoughts, it's to live in alignment with your values and to protect your peace. The shift is liberating. You find yourself moving through interactions with more ease, no longer weighed down by the mental load of crafting the perfect explanation for everything you do. You start to appreciate the quiet strength of standing in your decisions without apology. You realize that your time and energy are too valuable to be spent convincing someone of something they might not want to understand anyway. The beauty is that this change often surprises people who are used to you over explaining. They notice the shorter, more direct responses, they sense the confidence, and sometimes it even makes them reconsider how they approach you because they can no longer rely on you to overgive in the conversation. That change in energy can be a turning point. It creates a new boundary without you having to announce it. By letting go of the need to constantly justify yourself, you reclaim your mental clarity, protect your emotional energy, and step into a version of yourself that feels lighter yet stronger. It's not about shutting people out, it's about choosing when and how much you share, and making sure your words are rooted in self respect rather than fear. Your life is yours to live, not a court case to defend. Silence is one of the most underestimated yet powerful tools you can use when you want to reclaim your emotional space and shift the dynamics in any connection. People often believe that saying more, explaining more, or staying engaged is the way to maintain control, but in reality, silence can often speak louder than any carefully chosen words. It's not about playing games or punishing someone, it's about creating a space where your absence forces reflection. When you choose silence with purpose, you remove yourself from the constant push and pull of emotional reactions, and that's where the real shift begins. In moments of tension or emotional imbalance, silence disrupts patterns. If someone is used to you responding instantly, always being available, or engaging in long conversations to fix things, your sudden quietness becomes noticeable. It's not the kind of silence born from passive aggression or unresolved anger. It's the kind that communicates without words that you are no longer available for the same dynamic that drained you before. This silence is calm, intentional, and rooted in self-respect. You are not trying to provoke, but your absence naturally creates a void, and human nature is such that people notice what's missing more than what's present. That's the essence of emotional scarcity. When your presence is taken for granted, pulling it back makes it valuable again. It forces the other person to sit with their thoughts without you filling in the blanks for them. If they've been careless with your attention, the quiet makes them realize the weight of what they've lost access to. Your words may have been brushed aside in the past, but silence can't be ignored in the same way. It lingers. It makes them replay past conversations in their mind, wondering why the tone shifted, why the messages stopped, why the energy feels different. What's even more powerful is that this kind of silence benefits you just as much, if not more, than it impacts them. It gives you time to regain clarity, to detach from any emotional hooks, and to observe their actions without the fog of constant interaction. It creates a natural filter. Those who truly value will notice and make an effort to bridge the gap, while those who don't will simply drift away. Either way, your silence reveals the truth without you having to demand it. It also breaks the cycle of over-communication. Many people fall into the trap of explaining, defending, or persuading, thinking that more words will fix the problem, but often over-explaining just keeps the other person in a position of power and keeps you stuck in an emotional loop. Silence, on the other hand, removes that outlet entirely. It forces both you and them to sit in the discomfort, and in that discomfort, understanding and realization have space to grow. The beauty of purposeful silence is that it is both a boundary and a mirror. It sets a line without confrontation. Your energy says, I will no longer participate in what doesn't serve me without you needing to utter a single sentence. And it acts as a mirror because it reflects the other person's behavior back to them. If they've been dismissive, distant, or careless, the lack of your presence makes those actions stand out in stark contrast. They are left to examine themselves without your voice there to soften the blow or ease their discomfort. However, silence works best when it is paired with inner composure. If you're silent but still obsessively checking your phone, replaying scenarios in your head, or waiting anxiously for their reaction, the silence hasn't fully served its purpose. True emotional scarcity comes when you not only step back but also redirect your focus toward your own life, passions, and growth. When your silence is backed by genuine detachment, it becomes unshakable. This is where the real transformation happens, because the shift is no longer just about making them notice your absence. It's about you realizing the strength and no longer needing their immediate response or validation. The control moves inward. You stop measuring your worth by how quickly someone reaches out or how intensely they react. Instead, your sense of self grows from your ability to hold your own space without being pulled back into unhealthy patterns. And yes, sometimes your silence will bring them back. often more curious, attentive, or even remorseful than before, but other times it will simply create the clarity that they were never truly aligned with you to begin with. Either outcome is a win because silence always reveals truth, and truth is exactly what you need to decide your next move with confidence. When used with intention, silence isn't cold or cruel. It's one of the most respectful things you can give both yourself and the other person. It allows them the dignity of realizing things on their own, and it gives you the peace of knowing you are no longer wasting words where they aren't valued. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is saying nothing at all.